Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an absolute honor to rise in the People's House yet again and to have the opportunity to speak to this, our motion on eliminating, obviously, the caps on oil and gas and energy emissions, which has been to the great detriment of Canada's unbelievable and incredible potential that's yet to be fully realized. Today, I couldn't help, in preparation for these remarks, reflecting upon a film that was somewhat before my time. I was but an infant when it was first released, but it got re-released, I think, in the 1990s when I was in my teen years in high school, and it was a movie entitled When a Stranger Calls. And there was one particular line in that movie that seemed to go viral, as it were, before viral was even a word known. But it went quite far and wide, and it still echoes to today. And that phrase was this: a young lady was receiving call after call after call of a threatening nature, and she was afraid and paranoid and absolutely terrified. She was on the run and hoping to get help, and of course the calls kept coming. She managed to get a call through to the police, and finally the police returned her call and said, "Ma'am, the call is coming from within your own house." I couldn't help but think, Madam Speaker, that perhaps the greatest threats that we face are not from without, but those calls and those threats are coming from within. Through bad legislation, misplaced priorities, and putting the boot on the proverbial neck of our producers, our workers, our energy, oil and gas sector. I think it's time we deal with the call that's coming from within the House. And we can do that by passing our motion, which calls for the elimination of the caps on oil and gas emissions. This and production. This type of policy has done more to sabotage Canada's future than any threat coming from without. If we only got out of our own way and unleashed our own potential by allowing our workers to do what they do best, Canada could come out of the economic malaise in far better shape than we could have imagined, and we could stand on our own 2 feet with fortitude and confidence and face any other challenge that comes from without if we got our house in order from within. Madam Speaker, there are many, many people in our country who recognize the potential that Canada has to step into the vacuum and the void that's being created internationally. The world wants Canadian energy, they want Canadian oil, and they want Canadian gas. We have the best regulatory regime for those sectors, but we also have the best workers for those sectors, and we can have the best, most reliable, dependable energy supply to give to a vulnerable, energy-hungry world that we could ever imagine. But we've got to get out of our own way. And this opposition motion is a great first step to doing that, and I hope the government will join us in passing this. It's time to unleash Canada's potential. Our greatest threats are those that have been self-inflicted, whether it's interprovincial trade barriers or emissions caps. And I think what Canadians are demanding is for us to get our own house in order. Time for us to realize our potential. We got to get beyond the era of empty promises and grand announcements. This government have become masters at making great announcements. And it's wonderful. I love seeing all the happy talk. It's great. We have meeting after meeting and lots of happy talk, but really when you bore down through all the noise, there's been no really substantive moves to develop the infrastructure necessary to get our resources to market. There's not been one new pipeline agreed to be built since all the promises of becoming an energy superpower. There's not been the removal of the tanker ban so that we could export our resources to global markets. There has not been putting in place of the infrastructure necessary to get liquefied natural gas to the markets. So the frustration of Canadians is getting high. They are wanting to know, when will this government deliver on all these promises that they're making in meeting after meeting? The best way we can deliver on those promises is to make sure we start by passing this bill, this opposition motion, and get our resources unleashed so that it can supply a world that wants Canadian energy. The PBO came out with a report just recently in March of 2025 and talks about these threats within. Because of this oil and gas production emission caps, it says that our oil and gas production would fall by nearly 5%. It says that the national GDP would shrink by $20.5 billion every single year. And it said by 2032, 54,400 full-time jobs would disappear. Madam Speaker, these are not abstract figures. These are people's livelihoods. This is the subsistence for many families living throughout this country, in all parts of our country, whether it's in Alberta and Saskatchewan or whether it's in Newfoundland, and the spin-offs that affect the rest of the country. And when you shut down oil and gas production, you also shut down transfer payments. And I speak as an Atlantic Canadian in a province that has been a benefactor of those transfer payments that have come to our province and helped us meet our budgets and helped us keep our schools open and keep our hospitals open and help keep our economies going through economically challenging times. You know what? As a New Brunswicker, I'm thankful for Western energy production. I'm thankful for the oil and gas sector in Newfoundland. I'm thankful for the oil and gas sector that has kept Canada rolling and kept us and our schools and our services functioning in difficult economic times. And if you want to have national unity and unleash Canada's potential and pull us together as a country, stand on the side of energy, Canadian energy, that is responsibly developed and responsibly sourced. It's a good news story, and we need to stand on the side of Canadian producers. These types of policies have a devastating impact on rural Canada. Much of our natural resource and energy sectors are based in rural Canada, along with our agriculture. And it's those two sectors that have helped build this country, and it will be those two sectors that are key to our country's comeback. It's time we stop the anti-rural Canadian approach to governance and recognize it was rural Canada that built this country, and it will be rural Canada that is key to our country's comeback. And we can do that through unleashing our natural resource and energy sectors and getting off their backs and lifting off these punitive measures that keep our resources in the ground while allowing other countries that don't have near the regulation nor the human rights to advance their economies at our expense. It's time to get our own house in order. The globe is calling for it. How many missed opportunities have we had as a country? Japan wanted our natural gas. We said there's no business case. So guess what? They signed a $550 billion liquefied natural gas contract with the U.S. Europe wanted to do business and buy Canadian energy. We said, oh, there's no business case for that. We're moving beyond those old sources of energy. And guess what? They signed a $750 billion contract with the United States. Germany came here, wanted to do business with us, wanted to sign contracts, but we said, under the previous government, and which is current government still, there's no case for that. Well, I'm sorry, there's a great case for that, and we've watched over $1 trillion worth of economic productivity and opportunity slip through our fingers because we have been putting the boot on the very sectors that could lead to our prosperity. Madam Speaker, I can't help but think of a famous old story as I was preparing for this. It's an ancient story, and I know I'm down to 1 minute, so I got to do it quick. There was a lady who was in real trouble in ancient times. Her husband had died. She was left with 2 sons, and the collectors were coming and saying, we're going to take your 2 sons and put them in slavery to pay off your debts. She said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to turn. So she went to a wise elder in the community, and the wise elder said, what do you have left? She said, I have just a little bit of oil, sir. She said, well, you go back, close the door, get your sons to borrow all the vessels they can, and use that little bit of oil, pour it out. And they kept pouring out the oil into the empty vessels, and guess what? They kept filling and filling and filling those vessels. She came back to the wise man and said, we've filled all the vessels. He said, now go sell that oil and take care of your debts, and it will take care of your family. Madam Speaker, I think there's a truth in that ancient story. It's time we released the oil and allowed it to get us out of the economic malaise we're in. The answer's in the House. We just got to release it.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
You know, Madam Speaker, I listened to the member from Victoria, where he talked about what he witnesses in terms of oil exports going out of Burnaby as a result of a pipeline that was actually built by the former government, the Trudeau government. And that's a very strong positive thing. The Conservatives opposed it. Then I take a look in terms of Bill C-49. The member, I'm sure, is familiar with the Bill C-49. It was to allow for additional energy development in Newfoundland, Labrador, along with Nova Scotia. Both premiers were on side, yet the Conservatives voted against that also. It seems to me the Conservatives are good at talking. But when it comes time to actually do things, to support good ideas, to vote for things that are going to help the industries that he feels that we're falling short on, the Conservatives have been found wanting.
The Honourable Member for Tobique-Macnaquac.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thanks, my honourable colleague. Always good to see him. He's a workhorse here in the House. But I must say, I think he's sorely misled on this matter, because the only idea that they think is a successful project when it comes to oil and gas is ones that they'll drag out over 10 years, regulate and strangle to death, pump billions of dollars of taxpayer funds in, and not really incorporate the private sector, because the private sector long has left the scene because they realize Canada is not a secure place in which to invest for energy purposes under the current regime. They want stability and predictability. We believe on this side of the House, government needs to get out of the way, stop over-regulating, and allow them to come in and actually do what they do best. Let's partner with the private sector, and the Conservatives have done that in the past 4 times under the previous administration, and we built 4 pipelines.
The Honourable Member, l'Honourable Député de Montcalm.
The Honourable Member from Montcalm. Madam Speaker, I've been listening to this debate since this afternoon. On the one hand, you have Liberals that are voluntarily hypocritical, and on the other side, the Conservatives doing something quite similar. We've been saying the same thing for 30 years. We've been seeing that people seem to be focusing on economic factors over the environment. When we think of the issue relating to climate change, our forests are burning up, our soil is facing droughts, our farmers are having a hard time growing their products. Climate change is having an effect on the cost of living. But it seems as though they're willing to turn a blind eye when it comes to the environment.
Merci, Madame Présidente, and merci à ma collègue.
Thank you very much to my colleague for Quebec, Madam Speaker.
To answer that question, I just answer it with this question. Sometimes it's better to answer a question with a question, and that is this. Would my honourable colleague, because they feel that oil and gas and energy development is dirty and it's bad for the planet and not good for the environment, are they willing to turn down all future transfer payments that come from oil and gas sector and say we don't want that dirty oil and dirty gas money anymore, and they want that all reallocated so we can put that money into better forest management practices and purchasing water bombers to help with forest fires? Maybe that would be a productive use of the energy of this House, is reallocating the transfer payments to provinces that appreciate the oil and gas sector. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think what I heard from my colleague tonight is that words really matter, and I think this government plays a great deal on words. Example very quickly, some young people told me, he said into the camera, he will build homes we can afford. I said, that's an open-ended sentence. Did you hear homes you can afford to buy or homes you can only afford to rent? We're going to make Canada the wealthiest in the G7. Government investment? What is government investment? It's taking our tax dollars and depleting them. What is private investment? It's creating more tax dollars. What is an emissions cap? Oh, get rid of oil. But really, it's a production cap, correct? So what is the difference in the use of these words in regard to this topic of emissions versus production?
And second answer from the honourable member for Tobique-Mactaquac.
Thank you to the my honourable colleague from Yorkton Melville. Great question. And look, I think Canadians are demanding a whole lot less talk and a whole lot more action. And it's time that we end the era of Canadian self-sabotage, get out of our way, and start to unleash the potential. And we have unlimited potential in this country. We've just got to unleash.